house was supposed to be quiet. That was the first thing that felt wrong. I had lived there long enough to know the difference between silence and sleep. At night, the house usually settled into a rhythm. The faint ticking of the wall clock in the living room, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak as the wood adjusted to the cooling air. Those sounds were familiar, comforting even. But at 2:17 a.m., standing alone in my kitchen, I realized something was missing. The rhythm was gone. I was barefoot on the cold tile floor, holding a glass of water that I hadn't touched. Condensation slid slowly down the sides, dripping onto my fingers, but I barely felt it. My attention was fixed on the microwave clock, glowing an unnatural shade of green, the numbers blinking faintly like they were struggling to stay awake. I couldn't sleep that night. I hadn't slept well in weeks. I told myself it was stress, too much screen time, too many late nights. I lived alone and the quiet sometimes pressed in on me, harder than I like to admit. That night felt no different, until it did. That was when I heard it. At first I thought it was my own breathing. A slow inhale, a controlled exhale. I froze. My chest tightened as I held my breath, listening. The sound continued. It wasn't coming from me. It wasn't loud. It wasn't frantic. It was slow, steady, almost thoughtful, like someone taking their time, listening as much as breathing. The kind of sound you only notice when you're paying attention. And suddenly I was paying attention to everything. The air felt colder. The kitchen light seemed harsher, casting long shadows across the cabinets. My fingers tightened around the glass until the rim pressed painfully into my skin. I turned my head slightly. The pantry door was open. Just a little. Enough to notice. My stomach dropped. I was certain I had closed it earlier. I always did. The pantry door had a habit of creaking if left ajar, and I hated that sound in the dark. I remembered pushing it shut before going to bed, hearing the soft click as it settled into place. Now it stood open, the darkness inside thick and unmoving. The breathing came again, closer. My heart began to pound, each beat loud enough that I was sure it could be heard across the room. A cold, crawling sensation spread across my scalp and down my spine, raising goosebumps along my arms. Someone was in my house. The thought didn't feel dramatic. It didn't feel like something out of a movie. It felt heavy, final, like a truth my body had accepted before my mind could argue with it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. Instead, my hand moved toward my phone. It felt slippery in my palm, my fingers clumsy as I unlocked the screen. The light flared painfully bright in the dark kitchen, and instinctively, I angled it away from the pantry, as if the glow might give me away. The breathing stopped. The sudden silence was worse. I dialed 911. The ringing sound felt impossibly loud in my ears. Each tone stretched out, heavy with the certainty that whoever was in my pantry could hear it too. I held my breath, my eyes locked on the narrow gap of darkness. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm. Normal, human. It nearly broke me. There's someone in my house, I said. My voice sounded wrong, thin, shaky, like it didn't belong to me. Okay, ma'am, she replied gently. I need you to stay on the line with me. Where are you right now? In my kitchen, I whispered. I hadn't meant to whisper, but my throat refused to let the words come out any louder. I think he's in my pantry. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough for fear to bloom fully in my chest. Are you alone in the house? The dispatcher asked. Yes, I said. I live alone. The pantry door shifted, just a fraction of an inch. The wood creaked softly, like it was being pushed with careful restraint. I sucked in a sharp breath, my nails digging into my palm. I can see it moving, I whispered. The door, it's moving. Okay, the dispatcher said, her voice lowering slightly. I'm sending officers to your address right now. I need you to remain as still as possible. The breathing returned. Not loud, not rushed, deliberate. My skin prickled as the realization hit me. Whoever was in my house wasn't trying to hide anymore. They were listening. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding violently in my ears. I don't think he knows I can see him, I whispered. Another pause. Then the dispatcher spoke again, more carefully this time. Ma'am, I need you to listen to me closely. I leaned into the phone, every nerve stretched tight. Yes? Her next words made my blood run cold. I can hear someone breathing too. The pantry door stopped moving, and in that sudden, suffocating stillness, I realized something that made my knees weaken. The breathing wasn't coming from inside the pantry anymore. It was coming from somewhere behind me. I didn't turn around. Every instinct in my body screamed at me too, but something deeper, older held me in place. The certainty that if I saw him, something irreversible would happen. That the moment I confirmed his shape, his face, his eyes, I would lose whatever fragile control I still had. The breathing behind me was close enough that I could feel it. Warm, slow, measured. My spine went rigid, my shoulders locking as if I'd been frozen mid-thought. The kitchen light hummed faintly overhead, suddenly too loud, too present, like it was betraying me by existing at all. Ma'am, the dispatcher said softly, are you still there? Yes, I whispered, barely moving my lips. The words scraped my throat raw. He's right behind me. Okay, she replied, her tone careful, grounded. I need you to stay very still. Don't turn around. I closed my eyes. The darkness behind my eyelids felt safer than whatever was standing inches from my back. My heart pounded so hard it made me dizzy, each beat echoing in my skull. The breathing shifted. It changed rhythm slightly, like whoever it belonged to had noticed my fear, like he was reacting to it. A faint sound followed, fabric brushing against fabric, the subtle creak of weight shifting on tile. He was adjusting his stance. He moved, I whispered. I know, the dispatcher said immediately. I can hear that too. That confirmation sent a fresh wave of terror through me. This wasn't just in my head. I wasn't imagining it. Someone else, someone far away, could hear what I was hearing. You're doing very well, she continued. I need you to tell me, is there a clear path from where you're standing to another room? I opened my eyes slowly, keeping my head perfectly still. From the corner of my vision, I could see the dark mouth of the hallway leading away from the kitchen. It felt farther than it should have been, like the distance had stretched while I wasn't looking. Yes, I whispered. The hallway. My bedroom's at the end. Good, she said. I want you to move toward it, very slowly. If you feel him get closer, you stop immediately. My legs didn't want to move. They felt numb, disconnected, like they belonged to someone else entirely. It took all my concentration to shift my weight backward, just a fraction, easing 1 foot behind me. The breathing stopped. My stomach dropped. For a horrifying second, I thought he had lunged, that the silence meant he was reaching for me. But then I heard it again, closer to my ear now, slower than before. He was listening. I took another step. The tile was cold beneath my heel, grounding me just enough to keep me from collapsing. I focused on the sensation of the floor, the texture of it, anything to keep my mind from spiraling. Keep going, the dispatcher whispered. You're doing exactly what you should. The hallway swallowed the light as I backed into it. Shadows closed in around me, pressing from both sides. The kitchen behind me felt exposed now, like I'd left something important unguarded. The breathing followed, still behind me, still close. I swallowed hard. He's coming with me. I know, the dispatcher said. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it now. You're almost there. My bedroom door was only a few steps away. I could see its outline at the end of the hall, a darker rectangle in the darkness. Safety felt close enough to touch, and impossibly far at the same time. Then something brushed my arm. Not a grab, not a shove, just a light, deliberate touch along my elbow like a reminder. My breath caught violently in my throat. Every muscle in my body tensed, a scream clawing its way up from my chest. I forced it down. The touch lingered for a second longer than necessary. Then a voice spoke, so close to my ear that I felt the warmth of it against my skin. "Don't hang up." I nearly dropped the phone. "Ma'am," the dispatcher said sharply, "did he just speak to you?" I couldn't answer, because the voice hadn't moved away. It was still there, breathing, waiting. I don't remember deciding to move. My body did it for me. The moment his breath brushed my ear, something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but cleanly, like a thread being cut. Fear stopped being loud and became sharp, focused. I stepped forward. Hard. The sudden movement startled even me. My foot hit the floor with a dull slap, and I lunged toward the bedroom door, my free hand reaching out blindly until my fingers collided with the handle. Cold metal. Real. I twisted it and shoved the door open, throwing myself inside and slamming it shut behind me with every ounce of strength I had left. The impact rattled the frame, a deep, hollow sound that echoed through the room. For half a second, I thought the door would bounce back open. It didn't. I locked it. The click of the lock sounded pathetically small compared to the pounding of my heart, but it was enough. I staggered backward, my legs finally giving out beneath me, and sank down into the carpet, my back pressed against the bed. "Ma'am," the dispatcher said urgently, "are you in a secure room?" "Yes," I gasped. "I'm in my bedroom. The door's locked." "Good," she replied. "Stay where you are. Officers are on their way." I pressed the phone hard against my ear, like it was the only solid thing left in the world. My breathing was ragged now, loud in the quiet room, and I forced myself to slow it, terrified that he could still hear me. The bedroom was dark. I hadn't turned the light on before bed, and now I was grateful for it. The faint glow from the hallway seeped in beneath the door, casting a thin line of light across the carpet like a warning. I listened. The house held its breath. Then, footsteps. Slow, unhurried. They stopped right outside my door. I clamped a hand over my mouth. The doorknob didn't move. Instead, there was a soft sound. Knuckles against wood. Not a bang. A knock. Polite. Controlled. Tap. 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 My stomach twisted violently. "No," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. "Ma'am," the dispatcher said, her voice low and firm. "Do not respond to him. Do you understand?" "Yes," I breathed. The knocking stopped. Silence stretched out, thick and heavy. I counted my breaths, my heartbeats, anything to keep from losing track of time. Then his voice came through the door. Calm, almost gentle. "Clara." My blood went cold. I hadn't told the dispatcher my name. I hadn't said it out loud at all. My mind raced, grasping desperately for explanations. Mail, social media, neighbors. But none of them fit. Not with the way he said it. Not with the certainty in his voice. "You should sit on the bed," he continued quietly. "The floor's cold." Tears burned at the corners of my eyes. I squeezed them shut, my nails digging into my palm hard enough to hurt. "How does he know my name?" I whispered into the phone. There was a pause on the other end. "Ma'am," the dispatcher said carefully, "I need you to answer me honestly. Have you had any prior contact with this person?" "No," I said. "I swear, I don't know him." Another knock. This time closer to the lock, like he was leaning in. "I know your routines," he said calmly. "I know when you turn the lights off. I know how long you stare at your phone before you sleep. And I know you're talking to them right now." My breath hitched. "He knows about the call," I whispered. "Yes," the dispatcher replied. Her voice was still steady, but I could hear the tension beneath it now. "Help is close. You need to stay exactly where you are." The doorknob turned, slowly. Not forcing it, just testing it. Locked. I whimpered despite myself. He chuckled softly on the other side of the door. I told you not to hang up, he said. But that's okay. I like an audience. I pressed my forehead into the mattress, shaking. You're almost done, he continued. Just stay quiet. Let them think they're saving you. The footsteps moved away, not retreating, circling. I listened as he walked down the hallway, his presence never fully leaving, like a shadow that refused to detach itself from me. Ma'am, the dispatcher said urgently, officers are less than 2 minutes away. I nodded, tears sliding silently down my face. 2 minutes felt like forever. And somehow, I knew he wasn't afraid of them at all. The silence that followed was worse than the knocking. At least the knocking meant he was still outside the door, still bound by something as simple as wood and a lock. Silence meant possibility. It meant movement without sound. It meant guessing. I stayed on the floor, my back pressed against the bed, my knees pulled to my chest. The carpet felt rough against my skin, individual fibers digging into my legs, grounding me just enough to keep me from drifting away into panic. My phone was still clutched in my hand. I hadn't let go of it since the kitchen. My fingers were starting to ache from gripping it so tightly, but the idea of loosening my hold, even for a second, filled me with a fresh surge of terror. Ma'am, the dispatcher said quietly, I need you to stay with me. Are you still in your bedroom? Yes, I whispered. I haven't moved. Good, she replied. Do not open the door for anyone unless an officer identifies themselves. Do you understand? Yes. The hallway outside my room was completely silent now. No footsteps, no breathing, no creaking floorboards. It was as if the house itself had emptied out, leaving behind a hollow shell. But I knew better. The thin strip of light beneath my door flickered slightly as something passed in front of it. My breath caught. I watched the shadow move slowly across the gap, stretching, thinning, then disappearing. Whoever was out there wasn't rushing. He wasn't hiding. He was pacing. He's still here, I whispered. I know, the dispatcher said. I'm still hearing movement. That made my stomach twist. I hadn't heard anything. If she was hearing something I wasn't, that meant he was moving softly enough, but only the phone, only the connection was catching it. The idea that the call itself was acting like an extra set of ears unsettled me deeply. The doorknob rattled once. Not hard. Just enough to remind me it existed. I flinched, pressing myself tighter against the bed, my heart leaping violently in my chest. Ma'am, the dispatcher said, her voice firm now. If he attempts to force entry, I need you to tell me immediately. He's not forcing it, I whispered. He's just touching it. The knob turned slightly, stopping when it met resistance. Locked. There was a pause. Then his voice came again, softer this time, closer to the floor. I can hear her breathing, he said. My blood went cold. He's talking to you, the dispatcher said sharply. Do not respond. I wasn't going to, I whispered, though my lips trembled. The shadow returned beneath the door, lingering there now, unmoving. I don't need to come in, he continued calmly. You already know I'm here. The phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down despite myself. The screen flickered for a split second, the call timer freezing before jumping forward again. Did the call just... I started. Stay on the line, the dispatcher interrupted quickly. Do not hang up. Officers are almost there. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. Stay on the line. Like the line itself mattered more than anything else. The shadow shifted again, pulling away from the door, retreating down the hallway. Footsteps followed, slow, deliberate, moving toward the living room. Relief washed over me, thin and fragile. Maybe he was leaving. Maybe the sound of approaching sirens had scared him off. I strained to listen, my ears ringing with the effort. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. I don't hear him anymore, I whispered. There was a pause on the line. Then the dispatcher said something that made my chest tighten. I do. A faint sound filtered through the phone speaker. Breathing. Not rushed, not panicked, steady, and unmistakably close. Ma'am, the dispatcher continued slowly. Is your phone on speaker? No, I whispered. It's at my ear. Another pause. Then, very carefully, she said, Then I need you to understand something. My heart thudded painfully. The breathing I'm hearing, she said, is not coming from your house. The line crackled softly. A new sound layered over the dispatcher's voice. A slow inhale. A controlled exhale. Coming from my phone. From the call itself. I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at it in horror. The breathing continued. And somewhere in the house, far away now, something laughed. The first siren cut through the night like a blade. It was distant at first, faint, almost imaginary, but it grew louder quickly, swelling until it filled the space around the house. Red and blue light flashed across my bedroom walls in uneven bursts, slipping through the curtains like something alive. I didn't realize I was crying until I felt tears soaking into the sleeve of my shirt. They're here, I whispered. I know, the dispatcher said. Her voice finally softened, relief breaking through the professional calm. You did very well. Stay exactly where you are until an officer identifies themselves. The breathing on the line stopped. The sudden silence from the phone made my ears ring. I stared at the screen, half expecting it to light up again, to crackle with that sound, but the call timer kept moving, steady and indifferent. Heavy footsteps thundered through the house. Not careful this time, not slow, authoritative. Male voices shouted commands, sharp and loud, filling the hallway. Police, come out now! A door slammed somewhere, maybe to the front door, maybe the pantry. I couldn't tell. My sense of space felt warped, stretched thin by fear. Clara, a voice called out. This is the police. Are you in the bedroom? Yes, I shouted, my voice breaking completely. The door's locked. Okay, the officer replied. Unlock it slowly and step back. My hands were numb as I reached for the lock. It took me a moment to remember how it worked. When the door finally opened, bright light flooded in, blinding me. A uniformed officer stood there, his weapon raised, eyes scanning past me into the room. Another officer appeared behind him. They lowered their weapons when they saw me. You're safe now, one of them said gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. I flinched before I could stop myself. They guided me out of the room, down the hallway, and into the living room. The house looked smaller in the glare of flashlights and police lights. Ordinary, harmless, like it had never held fear at all. They searched everything, every room, every closet, every cabinet. They opened the pantry door. It was empty. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no open windows. Nothing disturbed except me. One of the officers approached carefully. Ma'am, are you sure there was someone here? I nodded desperately. He talked to me. He knew my name. The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. Did you recognize his voice? He asked. No, I said, but he knew things about me. They took my statement at the kitchen table, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. My phone lay on the table between us, screen dark now, silent. The dispatcher finally spoke again. Ma'am, officers have arrived. I'm ending the call now. Before I could respond, the line disconnected. The quiet that followed felt wrong. One of the officers cleared his throat. We'll have a patrol car sit outside for a while. Just in case. Just in case. They left an hour later. The house felt enormous after they were gone. Too open. Too exposed. I sat on my bed staring at my phone, replaying everything in my head, trying to convince myself it was over. Then the screen lit up. A missed call. Unknown number. My heart dropped. Another notification followed. A text message. You stayed on the line? So did I. My hands shook as I stared at the words. I hadn't told anyone about the text. I didn't need to. I already knew what it meant. They told me it was over. Everyone did. The officers, the neighbors who peeked through their curtains the next morning, even the daylight itself pouring through my windows like it could burn the night away. I nodded when they spoke. I thanked them. I repeated the right words in the right order, but I didn't believe any of it. Because my house felt different now. Not damaged, not disturbed, occupied. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I sat on my bed with all the lights on, my phone charging beside me, watching the screen like it might blink on by itself. Every sound, the refrigerator kicking on, a car passing outside, the wind brushing against the windows, sent a sharp jolt through my chest. The patrol car outside left at dawn. That was when the fear returned fully. Without witnesses, without uniforms, without sirens. I showered with the bathroom door open. I checked every room before sitting down. I started flinching at my own reflection in mirrors, half expecting someone else to be standing behind me. The house was empty. I knew that. And yet, sometimes I felt watched anyway. 3 days later, I was moved to a temporary place. Somewhere safe, they said. Somewhere he wouldn't know. I almost laughed when they said that. That night, lying in a strange bed under unfamiliar sheets, I finally let myself breathe. The walls didn't know me here. The air felt neutral, unclaimed. For the first time since the call, my eyes grew heavy. My phone buzzed. I froze. The screen lit up softly in the dark. Voicemail received. Unknown number. I hadn't heard it ring. My pulse hammered painfully as I stared at the notification. My thumb hovered over the screen, refusing to move. I told myself it could be anyone. A wrong number. A glitch. A delayed call. I pressed play. At first there was only silence. Then, breathing. Slow. Controlled. Familiar. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears sliding soundly into my hair. I told you, his voice whispered at last. They'd come. A pause. They'd leave. I sat up slowly, my entire body cold. You did everything right, he continued almost kindly. You stayed on the line. You stayed calm. You survived. Another pause. Longer this time. I'm proud of you. My chest tightened painfully. I'm not in your house anymore, he said. My breath caught. I'm not even close to it. The line crackled softly, like the sound of a connection stretching across distance. I wanted you to feel safe, he continued. Just once. My phone vibrated again in my hand. A new message appeared on the screen. A live location pin. My location. I didn't follow you, he whispered. You brought me with you. The breathing grew slightly louder. Closer. I'll see you when you're ready. The voicemail ended. The screen went dark. I sat there in the quiet room, phone clenched in my hand, listening to my own breathing, wondering, terrified, if it was really my own. Because somewhere out there, I knew it. He was. The city had been whispering fear for weeks. Newspapers were full of it. Another victim found last night, police baffled, residents urged to lock doors and windows. Mothers clutched their children on the bus, shopkeepers left lights on through the night, and every alley seemed to stretch longer, darker, more inviting to the shadows. For 13-year-old Ethan, the warnings weren't just words, they were rules. He had memorized every streetlight, every alley shortcut, every emergency number. And tonight, he wished he hadn't. He had been walking home from the library, earbuds tucked into his backpack because his parents had forbidden music at night. The streets were nearly empty, only the distant hum of traffic and the occasional dog barking somewhere behind a locked gate. The first warning came from the sound of footsteps too close. Ethan froze, pressing his back against a brick wall. He had walked the street countless times, and nothing ever followed him this closely. Not at 10 o'clock, not at midnight. The sound paused, then moved again. Quick, pattering, deliberate. Ethan swallowed hard. He fumbled with his backpack until his fingers found the small old flip phone his father kept for emergencies. Not a smartphone, just a simple device with a big green call button. He dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? The voice was calm, patient, routine. I think someone's following me, Ethan whispered. His voice trembled despite his effort to sound composed. Okay, the dispatcher replied. Where are you right now? Ethan glanced around, heart hammering. The streets were too quiet. I'm near Mulberry and Fifth, he said. There's a man. I think he's following me. He's been watching. The line was quiet for a moment. Then, stay calm, Ethan. Keep moving if it's safe. Can you get to a public place? Ethan's mind raced. There was a corner store just a block away. Open late. He knew the clerk, Mr. Harper. Safe, public, lit. I can try, he whispered. Good, keep the line open. Tell me every move. Ethan started walking. Carefully, deliberately, glancing over his shoulder. The man had kept the same distance the whole time. Close enough that Ethan could hear the scrape of leather on concrete, but far enough that he hadn't seen a face yet. As he approached the corner store, he noticed something chilling. A small, folded piece of paper lying in the middle of the street. He froze. The paper was too deliberate, too placed, not dropped by accident. Ethan, the dispatcher said. Yes, he whispered. There's something on the street. A paper. It looks like. Before he could finish, the sound changed. The footsteps behind him had stopped. Too quiet now. He felt a presence, heavy and patient, close enough that it could touch him. Close enough that he felt its breath or imagined it. Keep moving, the dispatcher said firmly. Almost there? Ethan nodded, though she couldn't see him. His small legs moved as fast as they could without running. He crossed Mulberry and saw the neon sign of the corner store flickering. Light, safety. But when he glanced back, the street behind him was empty. No man, no shadow. His chest heaved. Relief washed over him. Sir? The dispatcher asked. Do you see him now? Ethan's throat went dry. He wanted to say no, but his gut screamed otherwise. Something was still there, waiting. And as he watched the street, a shadow stretched unnaturally long across the lamplight. And then it winked. He didn't know how it had done that. Shadows couldn't wink, not really. He pressed the phone to his ear, whispering, He's gone? The line crackled. Then the voice came, calm, chilling, almost amused. Not yet, Ethan. He's closer than you think. Ethan's fingers tightened on the phone. His mind raced. He didn't know if he should run into the store, call for help, or drop to the ground and hide. And somewhere in the quiet, the faint sound of a whistle began. Low, deliberate, patient. Not from the street, not from the store, but in his ears and in his head. The sound followed him as he stepped through the store door. And then the lights flickered once, twice, and went out. The store's emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long, jittering shadows across the aisles. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears as he pressed himself against the far wall behind the display of canned beans. He could see the doorway, the faint outline of neon spilling in from the street, but the man, whatever had followed him, was nowhere. Still, Ethan knew better than to trust absence. Ethan? The dispatcher's calm voice crackled through the phone, tethering him to reality. Yes, he whispered. I'm inside. The lights, they went out. Stay calm, the dispatcher said. Do you see any exits, doors, windows? Ethan's eyes adjusted slowly. A dim red glow hummed overhead, just enough to see the outlines of shelves. There were 2 emergency exits, the front sliding door and a side door leading to the alley behind the store. Both had signs that said, push in case of emergency. I see 2 doors, he said softly. One in front, one in the back. Good. Which is safest? I don't know, Ethan admitted. The back door, it opens to an alley, but the street outside, I don't know if he's there or... He stopped mid-sentence. Something moved near the snack aisle. A shadow, thin and slow, slithering along the edge of the emergency light. I see him, Ethan whispered, barely audible. He's near the candy shelves. He's just standing there. Do not engage, the dispatcher said firmly. Do not move toward him. Keep hidden. Can you reach a secure area? Ethan's mind raced. The store was small but crowded with shelves and boxes. He could barely keep track of the figure. It didn't make a sound, no footsteps, no rustle, nothing. But he could feel it. That same patient presence coiled like a snake. I think I can move toward the back, he whispered. There's a storage room. It might be safe. Do it slowly, the dispatcher instructed, and keep the line open. Tell me every step. Ethan took a trembling step. The shadow did not follow, but he felt it, the way a gust of wind brushes your skin before you see it. Another step. Another. His back nearly brushed a stack of boxes when he heard the whisper. A soft, deliberate voice that did not belong to the dispatcher. Good boy. Ethan froze, pressing the phone tighter against his ear. Do you hear that? He whispered. I hear something, the dispatcher admitted, voice sharp now. Stay in the storage room. Lock yourself in. Can you do that? Ethan nodded, though she couldn't see him. His hands shook violently as he reached the door, yanking it closed and fumbling with the lock. It clicked. Safe, he told himself. Safe. But the faint scrape of metal echoed behind the door. He pressed himself to the cold wall, heart hammering, trying not to make a sound. Outside, the world was silent. No sirens, no chatter, just the soft hum of the emergency lights and the whistling again, low and deliberate. It's here, Ethan whispered into the phone. I know, the dispatcher said, voice steady but tense. Do not open the door. Stay quiet. Officers are on their way. You're doing well. A small light flickered in the storage room. The overhead bulb overhead dimmed and then brightened again. The whistling grew slightly louder. It wasn't coming from the street, not from inside the store. It was coming from everywhere, from the shadows themselves. Ethan pressed the phone against his ear, trying to steady his breathing. You can't hide forever, a calm, soft voice said, the one he heard on the street earlier. Ethan's fingers trembled, clutching the phone. Who are you? He whispered. The whisper was almost gentle, almost kind, and yet it carried a weight that made the room feel smaller, tighter. You know me, the voice said. I've watched, I've waited, and soon we'll be together. You just have to stay still. The storage room door rattled, not hard but deliberate, like someone testing the lock. Ethan's stomach dropped. He backed away from the door, eyes wide, barely daring to breathe. Outside the small fluorescent glow of the storage room, the store seemed to ripple, shadows stretching unnaturally long, folding the aisles like paper. He could see the shape of the figure now, tall, thin, patient, but its face was always just out of focus, as if reality refused to let him understand it fully. The dispatcher's voice cut through the terror. Ethan, the officers are 5 minutes away. Stay on the line. Keep calm. You can do this. Ethan nodded, whispering, I hear them. The sirens? I think someone's outside. And then the whistling stopped. Silence filled the storage room. For one heartbeat, he thought it was over. Then a soft click came from inside the room. The closet door, inside the storage room, shifted slightly. Ethan froze, pressed his back against the wall. A whisper came right next to his ear, so close he felt the breath. You can hide, but I can always find you. The phone screen flickered once, then went dark. The storage room felt impossibly small. Ethan's knees were pressed against his chest, the phone dangling from his ear. The dispatcher's voice, a lifeline in the dark. I'm here, Ethan whispered. I think he's inside the room. The dispatcher's voice tightened, No, Ethan, he can't be inside with you. Stay calm. Is the door locked? Ethan nodded, though she couldn't see him. I, I locked it, but something's moving. I can hear it. Whispering. Not words, just air. A soft thump echoed through the room, closer than any sound should be. It was followed by a dragging, deliberate noise, scraping along the tile. Ethan pressed his back tighter to the wall, trying not to breathe, trying not to move. Do you see anything? The dispatcher asked. Ethan's eyes scanned the dim light. The small bulb overhead flickered again. Shadows pooled in the corners like liquid, and there in the corner of his vision, something shifted. A figure taller than the shelves, impossibly thin, faceless, moving as if the shadows themselves obeyed it. I see him, Ethan whispered. Stay calm, the dispatcher said firmly. Do not engage. Keep your phone with you. Help is on the way. Ethan swallowed. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The front and back doors were several meters away. The aisles twisted like corridors, and that figure, it wasn't walking, it was gliding. Every step deliberate, waiting, patient. Then it spoke again. You're clever. Most children hide, scream, run. You think, calculate, you survive. Ethan's stomach dropped. It knew too much. I'm 13, he whispered. Please, just leave me alone. The figure paused, and for a terrifying second, the room was still. Then, in a voice like velvet over steel, You're never alone. A soft click sounded behind him. Ethan whipped around. The closet door, small, unassuming, was slightly ajar. The dispatcher's voice was tense now. Ethan, are you okay? I think the closet, it moved, he said, voice shaking. No, Ethan, focus, stay calm. Lock it if you can. You're safe as long as you don't leave your position. Ethan nodded, fumbling with the door handle. The click of the lock sounded deafening in the silent room. Then the figure whispered again. You can lock doors, you can hide, but every choice you make, I know, I see it. Ethan froze. That was impossible. I don't understand, he whispered. You will, the figure said, voice low, patient. Soon. The lights flickered violently. Boxes toppled as if shoved by invisible hands. The air thickened, heavy, almost tangible. Ethan's chest burned. He could hardly breathe. Ethan, the dispatcher's voice cut through. Can you see anything else? He shook his head. No, nothing. Just him. Always him. Waiting. And then, silence. The whistling returned. Low, patient, circling the room. Not outside, not on the street. It was inside the walls, inside the shadows, inside Ethan. I can hear him. Everywhere, Ethan whispered, shivering. The dispatcher's voice softened. Help is on the way, Ethan. Officers are 5 minutes away. You can survive this. Ethan pressed the phone to his ear, trying to anchor himself. But suddenly the signal crackled. The line buzzed, static, and then a whisper, low and deliberate, directly through the earpiece. Why do you call for them when you already know I'm here? Ethan's blood ran cold. That wasn't the dispatcher. That was him. The lights went out completely. Total darkness. The whistling stopped. And for one heartbeat, silence. Then a new sound. The soft, deliberate tapping of fingernails against the storage room door. Right behind him. Ethan pressed his back harder against the storage room wall. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to run, but the darkness had grown thick, almost liquid, filling every corner of the small room. The phone buzzed faintly in his hand. The dispatcher's voice was there, calm but tense. Ethan, are you still there? Can you hear me? Yes, he whispered. He's outside the closet. I can hear him tapping. He knows I'm hiding. I don't know what to do. Stay quiet, the dispatcher urged. The officers are less than 3 minutes away. You're doing exactly what you should. But the tapping didn't stop. Each tap was deliberate, waiting, measuring, counting. Then Ethan noticed something terrifying. The tapping wasn't coming from one spot. It moved along the wall, from the closet door to the boxes, then back again, faster now, circling him. The shadows themselves seemed to twitch and stretch toward him, bending unnaturally. He swallowed, voice barely a whisper. It's not just him. It's the walls, the shelves, everything. It's alive. A soft chuckle echoed in the room. Not through the phone, not even audible in the natural sense. It vibrated in the air, in his chest, inside his skull. You feel it, don't you? The voice said, low, calm. The city hears us. The streets remember. The alleys watch. You are never alone, Ethan. You and I, we are connected now. Ethan's stomach turned. He could feel it somehow. The way the city itself seemed to pulse and sync with the figure outside the closet. Lights flickered faintly in the distant streets he could see through the narrow cracks in the windows. A car engine idled somewhere behind the store. Somewhere a dog barked. Every sound seemed amplified, distant yet unnervingly close. I don't understand, Ethan whispered. Why me? Why? Why now? The chuckle came again, soft, patient, deliberate. Because you are clever. Because you survive. Because you notice. Ethan pressed the phone tighter to his ear, fighting to steady his trembling hands. The tapping grew louder. It was no longer just on the closet door. It was on the walls, the ceiling, the floor. And then the shadow appeared. Not a shape, not a figure, but a dark smear crawling along the floor like ink, moving toward him with impossible speed, swallowing the weak emergency light like it had always belonged there. Ethan screamed. The sound echoed through the storage room, bounced back to him, distorted. Ethan, the dispatcher shouted. Keep calm. Focus on your breathing. You can survive this. The shadow paused. A presence lingered, almost studying him. Then a whisper. You can't hide. You can't call them. Not anymore. The phone flickered. The screen showed the dispatcher, but her lips weren't moving. The shadow leaned closer, impossibly close. And for the first time, Ethan saw it. A face, or the suggestion of one. Empty eyes, wide grin, impossibly thin features staring through him. He dropped the phone. It hit the floor and skittered under the boxes. The dispatcher's voice was gone. Only static. Only the whistling. He backed toward the storage door, hand trembling over the handle. The door, it had disappeared. The shadow stretched, expanded, and then it whispered directly into his mind. Run or stay, it doesn't matter. I always find you. Ethan spun, heart hammering. The room wasn't the same anymore. Aisles twisted, shelves elongated, walls expanded and contracted. The city outside, faint through the small windows, pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, as if the streets themselves were alive and breathing. The soft hum of the city, the one he had walked through safely every day, was gone, replaced by the whistling, patient, waiting, constant. And then a faint light in the distance just outside the store, flashing red and blue, sirens. Relief surged. Officers. Finally. Safety. But the shadow paused, stretching, curling toward him. The voice came again. You think they can save you, but the city remembers, and I am part of it. Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to run. He wanted to scream, but the room shifted, twisted, folding in on itself. The exits were gone. The aisles warped into endless corridors. And in that moment, the whistling stopped. The city outside was silent, too silent. And then right behind him, the softest whisper of all. Welcome home, Ethan. The sirens blared closer now, bright red and blue lights cutting through the thick darkness that had swallowed the store. Ethan's pulse hammered in his chest, each beat echoing in the warped room around him. He could see the flashing lights through the small storage room window. Finally, rescue was here, he thought, but the store had changed. The aisles were no longer straight. Shelves leaned at impossible angles. The floor beneath him shifted subtly, like the tiles themselves were breathing. He stumbled, nearly falling into a dark gap between two warped shelves. The shadow loomed again, thin and tall, stretching along the warped walls, its faceless grin just visible in the dim flashing light. "You think they can save you?" it whispered. "They can't save anyone. Not really." Ethan swallowed hard, gripping the phone. They're here. I hear them," he whispered to the dispatcher, voice shaking. The dispatcher's tone was firm, professional, but the strain was there. "Ethan, the officers are inside. They're clearing the aisles. Stay calm. Keep your line open. Do not move toward him." Ethan nodded, though she couldn't see him. He pressed himself flat against the wall. Then the first officer appeared. No, not an officer. A distorted shape, bright flashlights sweeping through the warped aisles, but his uniform looked wrong. Too long, stretched. His face, blurred, shifting, impossible to focus on. "Ethan, come out!" the distorted officer called. Ethan froze. Something in the shape. It wasn't real. Behind him, the shadow extended. The air shimmered like heat waves, bending the light from the flashlight. Ethan's stomach dropped. "They can't help you," the whisper said, soft and patient, curling around his mind. "You brought them here. They just joined the game now." He realized his officers weren't there for him. They were part of the environment now. Shadows of authority, illusions meant to corral him, to confuse him. A sudden noise made him jump, a glass shattering. The storage room wall flickered, revealing another corridor he hadn't noticed before. Light spilled in from somewhere impossible. "Ethan," the dispatcher said, now almost a whisper. I'm not sure. I'm still tracking you, but something is wrong. The layout. It's shifting. The building isn't..." Static cut her off. Ethan's hands shook as he realized the shadow was everywhere at once now, curling along the warped shelves, stretching over the ceiling, wrapping the aisles like dark ribbons. He ran. Not toward the back, not toward the front. Just ran. Hallways shifted beneath his feet. Doors opened and closed by themselves. Shelves fell away, revealing new dark corridors, longer than they should have been. The sirens outside were still blaring, lights still flashing, and yet he was alone. The whisper came again. Close, inside his head. "Run. It doesn't matter. You are mine." Ethan skidded to a halt. The aisle ended in a wall, only it wasn't solid. The wall shimmered, rippling like water. He pressed a hand against it. Cold, solid. And yet, the whisper continued. "You see me. You hear me. You feel me. You cannot leave." Then a new sound, soft, deliberate, tapping. Not on the door, not on the wall, but inside the building itself. Counting, patient, waiting. Ethan's eyes darted around. The shadow grinned wider. And in that instant, he understood the truth. The store, the city, even the streets outside, they weren't just a setting. They were alive. The shadow had already claimed them. It had always been here, watching, waiting, teaching, hunting. And as he pressed himself against the cold floor, gasping, he realized something worse than fear. He wasn't just trapped. He had led it home. The lights flickered violently, then went out completely. The tapping stopped. Silence. Ethan whispered into the dark, holding the phone tight. "Please, someone, help." And then, soft as a breeze, the voice returned. "You cannot leave, Ethan. Not ever." The phone screen lit up one last time. Unknown number. Incoming call. Ethan froze. And the last thing he heard before the line went dead. "It's your turn to hide now." The phone lay in Ethan's hand, dead, the screen dark. He could feel it everywhere now. The air itself seemed thicker, heavier, vibrating with anticipation. The shadow, the thing that had been stalking him, teaching him, bending reality, was no longer just in the store. It was in the streets. It was in the alleys. It was in the eyes of every passerby, in the flicker of every streetlight. The city breathed with it, moving in rhythm with a predator that had no limits. Ethan backed into the far corner of the storage room, hugging his knees. The walls shimmered and stretched, aisles twisting impossibly, shelves bending like paper. Each shadow, each ripple in the light whispered his name. "You are clever. You survive. You see," it hissed. The voice was calm, patient, but inescapably real inside his mind, in his bones. "And now, you belong to the city too." A siren wailed somewhere in the distance. He thought it was help. He thought it might be real. But as the lights flickered, he saw it. The uniformed officers outside, frozen mid-step, faces blank and distorted. Their flashlights stretched and bent in impossible angles. The city itself had swallowed them into the pattern, leaving no one to rescue him. Ethan's chest burned. "No! No, this isn't real! This isn't real!" he shouted. But the sound came back distorted, echoing, layered over itself. A door materialized in front of him, a normal door, solid wood, with a faint light peeking from the other side. Relief surged. He stumbled forward, hand on the knob, and froze. The shadow grinned. Behind the door, faintly, impossibly close, he saw dozens of shapes, pale faces, staring, waiting. Some human, some twisted, all watching, all patient. "You've brought them here," it whispered. "And now, you see, you know, you cannot run." The air thickened. The sound of countless footsteps, soft but inevitable, echoed from the other side. Ethan's hands shook on the doorknob. The shadows around him grew taller, stretching toward him, curling across the floor like black ribbons. "Run," the voice said, soft, deliberate. "Or stay. It doesn't matter. You are mine." The flashing red and blue lights outside grew brighter. An illusion, a lure, or something worse. The city pulsed around him, alive with awareness. And in that instant, Ethan realized the terrible truth. It wasn't just one shadow. It had been here for years, watching, learning, choosing, waiting for clever children like him, or anyone who thought they could outsmart the darkness. He backed away from the door, the floor warped beneath his feet. The walls bent closer. His own reflection in the faint window looked wrong, stretched, hollow-eyed and smiling, like the shadow had already claimed him. Then a new sound, not a whisper, not a step, but the click of a phone unlocking. A message appeared. "You see me. I see you. You cannot hide. X." The last thing Ethan saw before the light went out completely. A single shadow, taller than the ceiling, leaning over him, grinning. And then the